welcome into CHGO White Sox Podcast. And welcome into Studio A in our West Loop of Chicago studios. My name is Herb Lawrence. I am Ecknerwall23 on Twitter. I am the community leader usually. Sean Anderson is on assignment today. He'll be back with us on Monday. But to my left, as always, it's Vinnie Duber, the CHGO White Sox beat reporter. We today will be going in depth into the Corbin Burnes to the Orioles trade and see what and how that affects the White Sox and Chris Getz. But our first guest will be Bob Kendrick, the for the president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City. But before that, I want to thank all of our people who joined me last night in our diehard Discord. It was a great time. We had Sports Gal Allie, B Burns 2288, Jarrett CWS, who joins us here usually in the chats, NATO and Curtis, who are all in the chats having a good time. It was our maiden voyage last night into the Sox Talk of our Discord. And if you want to become a diehard yourself, go to allchgo.com and sign up right now, and you can be part of these conversations that we have. They're just impromptu, overtime conversations that all of us can have a conversation about our team that we love. And before I go any further, I want to thank the new diehards who just joined in the other day. Bradley, Kevin, Jim, Brandon, Charles, Eric, Michael, and Genesis. What a awesome job by you guys. Thank you for joining us up. And if you know a person that would like to be in our Discord, be a diehard, like I said, allchgo.com is where you go and become a diehard today. You get 20% off all merch. You get a free t-shirt when you become a diehard. So it's well worth it. It pays for itself instantly. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to bring in the president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. It is Bob Kendrick joining us right now. Bob, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. It's great to be with you guys. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
And Bob, we're here in Chicago, of course, and Chicago has a very important part in the Negro Leagues and the Negro Leagues Museum. And if you go down to Kansas City, 18th and Vine, I believe it is, you'll see Chicago represented fully. But the person I want to talk about is the guy that is a huge, large, looming figure in the Negro Leagues and the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's Andrew Rube Foster. Can you tell us and my audience about what Andrew Rube Foster meant to the Negro Leagues and baseball as a whole?
He meant everything. He is aptly known as the father of black baseball because this visionary, and for me, guys, Rube Foster is the rarest of baseball figures. He is that rare baseball figure who would have gone in the Hall of Fame as a player, as a manager, and as an executive. And you don't find many, if any, that check all three boxes. He was a savant. He was an absolute genius. In my own personal estimation, he is the greatest baseball mind this sport has ever seen, although few folks know anything about it. Even though he is rightfully enshrined in the National Baseball Hall of Fame, guys, he was just so far ahead of his time. And so it would be Rube who would lead a group of 8 independent black baseball team owners into a meeting in Kansas City at the historic Paseo YMCA. The building still stands. It is going to become the future home of the Buck O'Neill Education and Research Center as we're in the process of renovating that old historic landmark. He would lead them into that meeting. He would convince them to give up their independency in order to form an organized structure. See, Rube understood that in order for black baseball to survive and thrive, it needed to have an organized structure that would be mirrored right after Major League Baseball. And he was able to do that. He would then become the president of the Negro Leagues. As you both know, he owned the Chicago American Giants. And again, he managed the Chicago American Giants. And I tell the story oftentimes. As a manager, he was so tremendously savvy, to the point, fellas, that he was known to fine his ball players at the turn of the 1900s as much as $5 if you were tagged out standing up. Oh no, you were supposed to slide. Rube would draw a circle down the first base line and a circle down the third base line. And if every one of his players couldn't drop a bunt inside the circle, oh man, he would find them. You see, he was adamant about the style of play that would become signature Negro Leagues baseball. Fast, aggressive, daring. They bunt their way on. They steal second. They steal third. And if you weren't too smart, they were stealing home. And that's what Foster preached. And so he is, I think, not only the most important figure in Black baseball history, you can make a legitimate case that Rube Foster is one of the most important figures in baseball history. And is interesting enough that people really don't know who this legendary baseball figure really is, at least not to the magnitude that they should. You know, I know that there's a park in Chicago called Foster Park, which is named for the legendary Rube Foster, who lived on the South Side, of course, when he was there in Chicago. And he and his brother, Willie Foster, are both in the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
So, Bob, if fans were going back in the day to watch Rube's teams, who were some of the guys they were seeing? So, you know, obviously we have 5 shows a week. We're frequently talking about the greatest players in White Sox history. Our Cubs guys are talking about the greatest players in Cubs history. Who are some of those Negro Leagues players who played in this city who are among the best baseball players of all time that these fans might not know about today?
Well, this city, the city of Chicago, has known great baseball for quite some time and really great Black baseball. First and foremost, there were 2 Negro League teams there, the Chicago Giants and the Chicago American Giants. And both were charter members of Rube's newly formed Negro Leagues. The Chicago Giants would eventually fade away, but the Chicago American Giants would be a mainstay. But even when we look contemporarily, when we start to talk about Chicago's most iconic baseball figures, both of them come out the Negro Leagues. On the north side, Ernie Banks. On the south side, Minnie Minoso. You know, when we talk about those 2 names, man, both come out of the Negro League. Minnie Minoso started his career with the New York Cubans in the Negro Leagues. Ernie Banks began his career right in Kansas City, playing for the legendary Buck O'Neil with the Kansas City Monarchs. And honestly, guys, you know, after Jackie had broken the color barrier and these opportunities were opening for these Black players, it was no longer a pipe dream about their possibility of playing in the major leagues. But you know, they had to push Ernie out. Ernie did not want to come to the Cubs. And it wasn't that he didn't want to necessarily play in the major leagues, but he was afraid of the isolation that he was going to have to deal with. They literally had to push him out the nest. They said, Ernie, you got to go. You have to go so that the next will have an opportunity. And interestingly enough, you'll find this, I think, interesting. Ernie Banks' roommate when he was playing for the Kansas City Monarchs, Elston Howard, the first Black Yankee. He and Ellie were roommates. And Ernie used to tell me that they would sit up at night and they would both kind of dream out loud on which of them would get to the major leagues first. Because again, it's real now. Jackie had already broken the color barrier. Other Black and brown players had moved in to the major leagues. So now this is real. But you think about this, the city of Chicago, 2 of its most iconic figures in baseball history, Ernie Banks and Minnie Minoso, both come out of the Negro Leagues. That's before we even started to talk about the litany of other stars, you know, the George Altmans of the world who played for the Cubs, and Sweet Lou Johnson who played for the Cubs. But you go back in history, perhaps the greatest baseball player to play in Chicago that people don't know, playing for the Chicago American Giants, was the legendary Oscar Charleston. Oscar Charleston was the truth. Buck O'Neil says that Oscar Charleston was the greatest baseball player he had ever seen. He thought Willie Mays to be the greatest major leaguer that he had ever seen. And most people concur. Yeah, as you both know, Willie Mays could beat you every way in which you could be beaten. He could beat you with his bat, with his arm, with his legs, with his glove. And of course, Willie Mays' illustrious professional career began in the Negro Leagues as a 17-year-old center fielder for the Birmingham Black Barons. But he believed the greatest baseball player he had ever seen was Oscar Charleston. And Oscar had played there for the Chicago American Giants early on. He's more attached to the Indianapolis ABCs and then later the Homestead Grays and Pittsburgh Crawfords, but Oscar started there before the Negro Leagues were formed, playing for Rube's Chicago American Giants. 5-tool guy, hit for power, hit for average, could field, could run, could throw. In 1921, guys, Oscar Charleston led the Negro Leagues in home runs, triples, doubles, stolen bases, and batting average in the same season. Yeah, no, man, he was tremendous. But then there was Rube Foster's brother, Willie Foster, as we mentioned when we were off air. Both of those brothers are in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Willie Foster is one of the greatest left-hand pitchers this game has ever seen. And so, no, Chicago has always known great black baseball, and the impact of the Negro Leagues in some ways is still being felt in Chicago because, as you both know, Buck O'Neil would leave the Kansas City Monarchs to join the Chicago Cubs as the major's first African-American coach, 1962. And of course, he had, by that time, sent Ernie Banks to the Cubs. He would eventually bring the Cubs Lou Brock, Lee Arthur Smith, Joe Carter, Oscar Gamble. Yeah, these are all guys that Buck signed. And while he didn't sign Billy Williams, he is responsible for Billy Williams staying in the game. Billy had left the Cubs and gone back home to Whistler, Alabama. And who did the Cubs send to go get him? Buck O'Neil. And after several days of taking Mr. Williams around to area ballparks, and as you can well imagine, all the kids were happy to see Billy Williams. He's a major leaguer. Billy finally looks at Buck and said, well, Buck, I'm ready to go back. And the Cubs said, put him on the bus. And Buck said, Old Buck had an old Plymouth Fury. He put Mr. Williams in that Plymouth Fury, and he drove him from Whistler, Alabama to San Antonio, Texas. Billy Williams becomes sweet-swinging Billy Williams, Hall of Famer, and Mr. Williams will be the first to tell you that he owes his career to one John Jordan Buck O'Neil, a Chicago fixture, even though we claim him in Kansas City because he spent so many years, lived and died in Kansas City.
And of course, Chicago is the birthplace of the Major League All-Star Game, as it was here at Comiskey Park, but it has its roots with the Negro Leagues. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, man, the East-West All-Star Classic. Fellas, we're talking about one of the greatest sporting events in American sports history, and nobody knows anything about it. Debuted the same year as Major League Baseball All-Star Game, 1933. And folks, yes, it did outdraw Major League Baseball's All-Star Game. They were putting over 50,000 fans in Chicago's Comiskey Park for this showcase event. Buck O'Neil says that black folks would come from as far west as Los Angeles by train, as far south as New Orleans by train, as far east as New York by train, converging on Chi-Town for this showcase event. I don't know if there's anything that compares to the pageantry and the majestic nature of the East-West All-Star Classic. I guess an NBA All-Star Game would today from the standpoint of star power that's there, but anybody who was anybody was there at the East-West All-Star Game. It was, as you can well imagine, it's the creme de la creme, the biggest stars, and they get there and they're able to showcase this skill set. In many ways, it was bigger than the Negro Leagues World Series.
Bob, the White Sox, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, rose a flag to honor the American Giants above what is now Guaranteed Rate Field. Mm-hmm. How important is it for the major league teams today to recognize the Negro Leagues history and to make sure that the kids and the adults themselves too that are going into those ballparks are remembering that is definitely part of their city's baseball history?
It's very important, and as you can well imagine, for us at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, it just gives us additional foot soldiers who are out there helping elevate the awareness of this great history. We're so proud of our long-standing partnership with the White Sox. And this starts at the very top. with Mr. Reinsdorf. And I will never forget when we opened what we thought was going to be our permanent home. As you both know, we've announced plans to build a new Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. But when we opened what was going to be our permanent home in 1997, Mr. Reinsdorf was there for that grand opening celebration. And I will never forget, he was walking through the museum and he comes across a photograph of Sam Hairston, the great Sam Hairston. And it was very emotional because Sam had worked for the White Sox organization for quite some time. For those of you who may not be familiar with Sam Hairston was the last Negro Leaguer to win the Triple Crown. He was an outstanding player, but he was old by the time he gets to the majors, and he really never got a fair shake. Of course, he had two grandsons that haven't been that long been removed from Major League Baseball, Jerry Hairston Jr. and Scott Hairston. And they come from a long line of Hairston professional baseball players. But as I tell Jerry Jr. And his brother, none of y'all were as good as your grandfather. No, Sam could absolutely play. But to see the emotional reaction that Mr. Reinsdorf had to seeing that image of Sam, I think it just further entrenched his desire to want to be supportive of the work that we've done. And so the White Sox organization has been with the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum almost every step of the way since our early organization. And so that relationship is something that we value tremendously. But anytime those kinds of things happen, anytime that the major league teams put on those Negro League uniforms and hold those throwback celebrations, it just sparks, I think, greater interest in the subject matter. And maybe it will convince somebody to maybe look and dig a little deeper. Maybe it will drive them to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum to learn more. And in the process, it broadens our base of potential support. And of course, that's my job, is always try to figure out ways in which we can build on that base of those who will support the museum, whether it's through resources, whether it's through donation of memorabilia. It is a constant effort. But no, we're very, very appreciative. And for them to raise that Chicago American Giant flag was very significant.
And Bob, I was talking to you off air a little bit. I'm a big time MLB The Show fan. I play the game pretty much every day. And in the game last year and in subsequent years to come, there is a feature about the Negro Leagues where you're prominently presenting these players that we might not have known. Of course, Jackie Robinson is in there, Oscar Charleston, as you talked about, and Rube Foster too, as a player in that game. I've already finished Rube's all the way through, but what went into getting this and in that game in the San Diego studios, including it into the MLB The Show? Because I find it very both entertaining and educational as a person that thought he knew about the National Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. I didn't know anything, and the game has expanded that knowledge.
Well, and it has done so for so many who are gamers, and not just in this country, but around the world. And I can't even begin to express how excited I am about this partnership that we have with San Diego Studios, Sony PlayStation, with the inclusion of the Negro Leagues in the video game MLB The Show. There had been a lot of people who had kind of questioned out loud, when will the Negro Leagues be in a video game? And to be honest, guys, I wasn't sure it was ever going to happen. And then I get a call from, now he's part of, we're like family now, Ramon Russell. And Ramon reached out to me and he wanted to temper my expectations. He said, well, we're thinking about the possibility of including the Negro Leagues in a video game. And we subsequently started to set up meetings. And the more meetings we held, the more stories I told, the more interested they became. And actually, this game was supposed to be released. The one that came out in 23 wasn't supposed to be released until 24. But they were so excited about the content that they moved the timeline up. And I'll be honest, y'all, I saw myself doing a lot of things. I never saw myself being in a video game. And so this has been one of the coolest things ever. And you have to understand, for a museum, a cultural institution like the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, it is indeed about establishing relevancy. There's a misnomer that our young folks don't care about history. They do care about history, but it is also incumbent upon how history is presented to them. So I can't sit back passively and hope that they come to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. I got to go reach them. I got to go to them. And I got to reach them in the modes and mediums in which they are accustomed to engaging with. And as we talked about off air, when you are being entertained and educated at the same time, it stays with you. And all summer long, we had kids coming through the museum because they saw the game, they saw the museum in the video game. And here's the kicker. They wanted to meet the guy that's telling stories in the video game. And I'll never forget, guys, I'm taking a group of potential investors. You may know, and I'm in Nashville now, you may know that we are part of an effort to try and bring expansion Major League Baseball to Nashville. And I like to speak these things into existence. When we do, the team will be called the Nashville Stars, after the old Negro League team, making it the first Major League team to ever carry the name of a Negro League team. So I'm taking these guys through the museum, and we get out on the field of legends where the life-size statues are. And I'm going through the litany of introductions of the players on the field as they are in position. We get to Satchel. And as you know, in the video game, Satchel had names for his pitches. Yeah, so he didn't have fastball, curveball, changeup, slider. No, not Satchel. Satchel had what he called his midnight creeper. He had the two-humper. He had the bat dodger. He had the hesitation pitch. He had the long tom, the short tom, the jump ball, the trouble ball, the radio ball, the wobbly ball, the dipsy-do. And he also had a pitch that he famously called his B-ball. And I would always pose this question to my guest. Do you know why he called it the B-ball? And guys, and I tell the story all the time because it just touched my heart so much. When I posed that question, a young white kid is there with his father. He couldn't have been more than 9, 10 years old. Man, he sticks out his chest. He raises his hand and he says, Mr. Kendrick, I know why Satchel called it the B-ball. I say, you do? Well, tell the folks why Satchel called it the B-ball. He says, Satchel called it the B-ball because Satchel says it bees where I want it to be when I want it to be there. And I said, man, you must have been playing the show. And his daddy looked at me and says, yes, he's been playing the show and he's been paying attention to the stories that you're sharing in the video game. And guys, that's exactly what we wanted to have happen.
That is just an awesome story. And as for, it's a great message. Be where they're at and go and find them where they're at. But also, as a person that's gone to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum 3 times now, I'm telling you, if you have any plans to go to Kansas City or don't, make your plans this summer to get out there.
Absolutely.
And you were just talking about maybe an expansion and what the Negro Leagues is going to be in the future. So tell us a little bit more about the building that you guys are trying to move to for the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum.
Our story, in so many ways, fellas, mirrors the story of the Negro Leagues. No one gave the Negro Leagues any chance of succeeding. Everybody thought it was going to be a fly-by-night operation that would just die in little or no time. They lasted for 40 years and not only changed the game, but changed our country. The same could be said about this little fledgling Negro Leagues Baseball Museum when we established in a one-room office in 1990, where guys like the late, great Buck O'Neill, the founder of this legendary institution, and others took turns paying the monthly rent to keep the little office open, to the point that we built what you've now seen, what I thought was going to be our permanent home when we moved into that space in 1997, our current home. And of course, along that journey, we've been recognized as America's national Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, to now being at the cusp of building what I call the nation's first Negro Leagues campus as the gateway into historic 18th and Vine, saving the former Purcell YMCA, and then building a new 30-plus thousand square foot standalone Negro Leagues Baseball Museum adjacent to that historic landmark, which is going to be transformative there for that historic 18th and Vine Jazz District, but it's also going to create an international headquarters for both Black baseball and social history. You see, I remind folks all the time that the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum is one of America's greatest civil rights, social justice institutions. It's just seen through the lens of baseball. But more importantly, it is triumph over that adversity. And that's a side of my journey as an African American seeking equality in this country that we don't oftentimes talk about. You've seen the downtrodden aspect of my journey. So you've seen me enslaved. You've seen the water hoses released, sprayed on me, the police dogs released on me. But my success stories are rarely ever talked about. And so in order to find commonality, you need to know my entire story. I am more than just that downtrodden side. And the story of the Negro Leagues, guys, is one of those great American success stories. You won't let me play with you. I will create my own. And when you stop to think about that, that is the American way. And so while America was trying to prevent them from sharing in the joys of her so-called national pastime, it was the American spirit that allowed them to persevere and prevail. What's not to love about this story? Yeah, and so now to be able to grow this institution and to expound on these stories, share new stories, and connect them to what our children in particular are, some of the issues that they will have to deal with, as they grow into this society is really important. And by doing so, we're leaving a legacy. We're leaving hopefully an institution that will stand the test of time so that generations will get an opportunity to not only come there and learn about this tremendously important educational experience, but I think maybe even more important, gain inspiration from this story. Because what drives the story is the fact that they never cried about the social injustice. No, they never cried. This is not a woe is mine kind of story. They never cried about the social injustice. They went out and did something about it. And that's what drives it. That's why it's so compelling. That's why it's so inspirational and so awe-inspiring. And we need those stories to be told. And as you both know, there are not many Negro League players still with us. They're like World War II vets. Many of them were World War II vets. So in the not so distant future, there won't be any Negro League players to attest to the greatness of this league. And even more so, the fans who saw them play. We're losing them as well. So we've got this mission to preserve, celebrate, educate, enlighten, but also to inspire the next generation to dare to dream.
Bob, it's been an absolute treat to have you on. We can have you on and listen to these stories for another hour, but they make us do commercials and such. But really appreciate you coming on. And the one thing I took out of last week's tragedy where some ruffians tore out the statue of Jackie Robinson and burned the statue is that Major League Baseball stepped up and people on the GoFundMe stepped up and conquered. It made love conquer hate, and it was great.
And that's what we have to do. When it happened, I was sickened like most of the people who saw it. And at that point in time, sometimes you are ready to wave the white flag on humanity. People will just do some despicable things, and you're ready to give up on humanity, and you know you can't give up on humanity, but when you see these things, you are ready to give up. And something that the late, great Buck O'Neill once said to me, and it reigns so true, there's always been more good people in this world than there are bad people. And the good people stepped up. And out of darkness came light. Major League Baseball announced that they're going to replace the statue and also support League 42. As you mentioned, the GoFundMe campaign has almost reached its goal. At least the last time I checked, almost $175,000 raised, to try and make and ease the pain of that heinous crime. And so, I'm thrilled that the good people stepped up. Once again, we see it all the time. So no, we can't give up on humanity, because humanity and good will continue to overcome and triumph evil.
Amen. That is the voice of Bob Kendrick, the president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. Visit him down there in Kansas City. Follow him on Twitter at NLBMPrez on Twitter. Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Bob.
Oh, guys, it's my pleasure. Anytime. I look forward to seeing you both in KC.
We'll do that, definitely. I love Kansas City. I mean, you don't have to ask me twice to go down there. I love that place. But
thanks, Bob.
We have a couple commercials we got to do, Vinny, and I'll read the first one, and the second one we can sing together. Let's see. I'm on the wrong one. My bad. No. CD1 Cleaners. What makes CD1 price cleaners unique? Low prices. Customers save over 30% on their dry cleaning bill by switching to CD1 price cleaners. Simple, transparent service. Other cleaners charge a different price for each type of garment. Plus, they have upcharges. You may pay different price for each time that you visit. At CD1 Price Cleaners, we charge one low price for any garment. Yep, even sports jerseys. The same one low price. And they have a fast turnaround. CD1 Price Cleaners has your order ready the same or the next day. Other cleaners take 2 to 4 days to have your garments ready. And at CD1 Price Cleaners, they send you a text when your order is ready to pick up. And they have a wide variety of services, whether you're looking for dry cleaning, wash and fold laundry, blankets and comforters, tailoring and alterations, or leather cleaning and area rug cleaning. CD1 has you covered. What you need to do right now is visit chgo.cdone.com. The link is in the description. Once again, that's chgo.cdone.com. Once there, you can pick up from an in-store coupon or online pickups delivery coupon available to you. CD1 Price Cleaners is good for you. And now, Vinny.
Yes, sir.
588-2300 Empire.
With Empire today, you get shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and that low price guarantee. Empire today is the best place to get new flooring, so of course they have copycats, but Empire can't be beaten. Not on quality, service, speed. So competitors advertise low-quality products that Empire simply won't carry. Empire won't promise the lowest prices because anybody who does that is putting flooring in your home that they won't put in theirs. You got to go check out that virtual floor designer tool. It's a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's easy. Just snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your room. Shopping for floors at a big box store can be frustrating, Herb. You might be talking to somebody who was working in plumbing yesterday.
Ridiculous.
Good gracious. But flooring is all that Empire today does. They live and breathe flooring. Sometimes they eat and drink flooring. So you can be confident that you're getting honest, upfront advice. Here's that call to action, folks. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code CHGO. Restrictions do apply. See empiretoday.com/CHGO for details.
And last night, Vinny, there was some baseball news that happened.
Some big old baseball news.
Oh, my goodness. The same team that the White Sox and us here at CHGO White Sox have been talking about, the Baltimore Orioles. They received Corbin Burnes from the Milwaukee Brewers for the low price of infield Joey Ortiz, who is a top 100 prospect, no matter who you ask, and left-handed pitcher D.L. Hall. It's a horrible name for a pitcher. And the 34th pick in the 2024 draft. That would have been the pick that if Corbin Burnes would have stayed with the Milwaukee Brewers, the Brewers kind of would have got a compensatory pick. So
had he stayed and then left.
Had he stayed and left. Yeah. And so when I first looked at that deal, Vinny, I was kind of shocked at the relative low price for an ace. And I 100% think Corbin Burnes is an ace. But it was only 1 year left on his deal. What were your first blush impressions about Corbin Burnes going to the Orioles for that price?
Well, listen, the reason that we're talking about this is because Dylan Cease's name has been in trade rumors all offseason, and quite frankly, he's been in trade rumors all offseason in relation to the Baltimore Orioles, who needed a top of the rotation guy on their pitching staff, and boy, did they get one in Corbin Burnes, who, unlike Dylan Cease, has already won a Cy Young Award, not just finished in the top 2 there. But you bring up the huge distinction, which is Corbin Burnes is going to be a free agent at the end of the 2024 season. Dylan Cease is not slated to hit free agency until the end of the 2025 season. So I believe we were talking about it before the show started, and I said, man, if the White Sox would have made that exact trade, fans would have been furious at that return. And that's no slight to those players. Certainly Ortiz is viewed as a tremendous defender, and a top 100 prospect, like you mentioned. But to get that for the caliber of pitcher that Burnes is, I mean, all the reactions that I saw seemed to think that the Orioles really got away with one, because not only did they get a fantastic pitcher to set them up as the favorite in what is probably the toughest division in baseball, but they do it and get to basically keep everybody else that has made them the top-ranked farm system in the sport as well, with the exception of one key player there going away. So what I think it means for the White Sox, though, I don't know if it really changes anything, to be quite honest. The main thing it does is it makes Baltimore less needy of a top-of-the-rotation starter, and perhaps they're fine going into 2024 and perhaps envisioning completing 2024 with their rotation looking the way it does right now. But there's no reason, certainly given the relatively affordable salary that Dylan Cease will have both this year and next year, that they couldn't go out and make another trade for Dylan Cease as well, using some more of those higher-ranked prospects as the return package. So, I think people are like, oh, boy, Chris Getz sat around too long, and now he can't make a trade because Dylan Cease, is still there, and the Orioles have already made their deal. Listen, there's more than one team than just the Orioles. Obviously, White Sox fans would love to see some of those prospects come back to the South Side, but we knew, I think, when nothing happened around the winter meetings and the ensuing days, that all the reports pointed to the White Sox are going to hold on to Dylan Cease into the season and maybe wait till the desperation kind of ratchets up come trade deadline time. Because, listen, the White Sox there's no rule that they have to trade him. Obviously, it would probably be the best thing for their long-term interests to maximize his value, but you might still be able to do that at the trade deadline because teams get a little bit more desperate, right? There's going to be injuries. There's going to be pennant races going on, and teams are going to say, well, I can't go out and just pay money to Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, who still ridiculously have not signed with the team. But you're pigeonholed into saying, boy, if I want to make this run at this World Series this year, and in the case of Cease, he would help you do so in the following year as well, I got to finally meet that high asking price that the White Sox are asking for. And it could be the Orioles. Maybe they, outside of now Corbin Burnes, the rest of their starting rotation is all young guys. Yep. Who's to say that they're going to go out and deliver the performance that their team hopes that they're going to do? So whether it's the Orioles, whether it's the Dodgers, who never seem shy about adding anybody, or any other team across baseball that might find themselves in a race for a division title, a playoff spot, a World Series championship, I really don't think that this does anything to preclude the White Sox from completing a deal, other than you're probably not going to see them trade him to the Orioles before opening day.
This might be me reading into it way too much, and of course I do that all the time. But with the speed of the trade right after the announcement of the new ownership in Baltimore, it tells me that this deal was either it was already shaped up and tailored to what it was as it was announced last night, but they needed some certainty on who's going to be owning the team. So the expenditure of having Corbin Burnes on your team, I think it's $16 million this year, had to be clear because they didn't have a new owner. So I think that the conversations between Baltimore and the White Sox are probably, you hear that they're asking for too much. And that might be asking for too much because we already have Corbin Burnes in hand. We have an ace. Yes, it's only for 1 year. We have this guy, and they're asking for only these players when DL Hall and Joey Ortiz, while you're asking for the moon and Colton Cowser and maybe and Heston Kjerstad. So it might be a good thing for the White Sox. And I know White Sox fans are disappointed today with Chris Getz asking for too much. And you see the Alex Anthopoulos video from a couple days ago, the Braves GM, saying that, it was too expensive for them to acquire Dylan Cease. But as Vinnie just said, this guy's off the market now. Baltimore's keeping him. So with all these teams going to the regular season, and then when you get to the trade deadline, Corbin Burnes not on the list anymore. As you said, those free agents, Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell, will be signed eventually. And so the White Sox might be in the catbird seat in July, where
I'll tell you what, Wimpy.
Tell you what. And they just have Dylan Cease for a year and a half, 2 more pennant races, and then they can ask for that same price because teams are desperate at that time. They need to go and get a frontline starter, as you pointed out. Injury, underperformance, surprisingly competing now. Those type of things, like the Reds, I could think about them, like seeing the Brewers do what they're doing, kind of scaling back, seeing what the Cubs are not doing as far. It might be the time for the Reds to actually pick up somebody. Maybe they don't do it before the season, but maybe they're doing the same thing they did last year where they were like a game behind the Cubs and a couple games behind the Brewers, and they're middling in July and like, you know what we need? Top line starter. Dylan Cease is right there for you. So White Sox fans, don't fret. I think you could still get a similar to better deal in the July trade deadline because the desperate nature of the MLB teams and all the teams. We counted, Jim Cook, who was our sales guy, he was in the Discord chat last night too. Just like 7 teams right now are out of the playoffs. So that's 23 other teams competing for a division. And no matter what, the playoffs being expanded, it means that a lot of other teams are out there desperate for somebody of Dylan Cease's caliber and the price tag not being that high.
Well, and the reason that I say that I don't think it changes things very much for the White Sox is because we were kind of already at this point, right? I mean, we were already talking about them probably holding on to Dylan Cease until the trade deadline. We were already seeing reports saying Major League Baseball teams think that the White Sox asking price is high, and they think it's too high for them to agree to at the moment. So the White Sox are probably going to hold on to him and wait. And that's all before last night even happened.
Yep.
And so last night happens. What does it do to change it? It takes the Orioles out of the running, kind of. You know what I mean? So I don't think it even entirely takes them out. And not only that, all the players that the White Sox were probably asking for and that high price with the Orioles specifically, they're still on the Orioles.
Exactly.
And so I don't think that eliminates the idea that a trade could happen down the road. Now I was talking with Jim talks to everybody. We're always bringing up Jim. Jim should have a like an off camera. Just go to like the Jim cam, but. Jim was saying to me too, like, he's worried, he's afraid that something's going to happen out, with an injury or something like that, that the White Sox might want to change their strategy and limit Dylan Cease in some way to make sure that he's not going out there to hurt himself. I don't think that is something that you need to worry about with this player. Pedro Grifol and Chris Getz both have been asked about what has it been like for Dylan Cease to hear these trade rumors all year long. Is that affecting him? Do you have to talk to him and have conversations with him? And the thing that they keep bringing up is he's built in a way that it is not affecting him personally. Not to say that kind of talk doesn't affect a baseball player or any other baseball player, but specifically with Dylan Cease, he's the kind of guy who can handle that, right? I also think he's the kind of guy that can handle a workload.
Yep.
I mean, he's shown it, right? Part of the reason that the White Sox asking price is so high is because Dylan has been able to go out there and show that he's durable, that he's able to make all the starts. Now, this might all be me, jinxing everything for the coming year, but you can't predict those kinds of things. You can't bank on those kind of things happening. And I think that this is a guy who's gone out and shown that you got to give him the ball until he's out of gas in a particular game, not necessarily say, all right, we're going to throw some training wheels back on you because we want to make sure we can trade you in a little bit. Now, you got to go out and let that guy show other teams why he's as valuable as he is.
Yeah, and I think, it doesn't hurt the trade value. And they can't be afraid, Tom. If he gets hurt, he gets hurt. That's, it's baseball. But he's their ace. He's the White Sox ace, so he'll be taking the ball every fifth. We know that because Dylan Cease is as durable as it comes. And that, I think people are overlooking. They're just saying, oh, yeah, Corbin Burnes has won a Cy Young, and he's a better pitcher than Dylan Cease. I hear that all the time. But I'm like, posting has its own value. Yes, the ERA was a little inflated last year for Dylan Cease, but do you think that's the real guy? I don't. I think the 22 guy is the real guy out there, maybe somewhere in between the 22 and 23 guy, but that's still a top-line rotation guy, especially if he goes out there every fifth day and grabs the ball and takes it and pretty much gives your team a chance to win each and every day. So I'm very, very excited about the White Sox future prospects of getting somebody for Dylan Cease, because if that's what Corbin Burnes is getting for 1 year, while it's not a great return, you still get a top 100 player in Joey Ortiz, who everybody says is going to be a major leaguer for a long time, a really solid defensive player, and probably establishing his power, and he'll be playing a lot this year for the Milwaukee Brewers. And DL Hall, who is a starter / reliever. More people think that he's probably kind of better as a reliever because of his high 90s fastball and his slider. He really hasn't developed a third pitch that is he can go to all the time. So he's like Garrett Crochet, but a little bit better and also actually in the league right now. So that's a good but not great return for Corbin Burnes. And then the compensatory pick also. I think Dylan Cease, with the years left, with a good first half, will get similar to a much better deal to what that was out there, because the Orioles, they are the number one farm system. They didn't even really lose anybody. I think, as you said, if they think that John Means is not ready to go, or Dean Kramer's not the pitcher they want as their fourth or fifth starter, they could do this again, and they could trade with the White Sox and have Corbin Burnes and Dylan Cease in that rotation. And the AL East, tell me you don't need that. Tell me that the KPW's Toronto Blue Jays are looking to feast on them, or the Boston Red Sox, the Yankees, or the Rays. So, yeah, there's still possibilities for the White Sox to get exactly what they want for Dylan Cease, and also not, just be sad that that the White Sox didn't pull a move right here. So, yeah, it was a little shocking initially last night to see the Orioles pull a trade like that, but I think the White Sox in all this will be fine. And Chris Getz, I think, as I said before, you should ask for a big price for Dylan Cease and maybe not, come down from that a lot, but learn the lesson and say, I can move a little bit, slightly, but no, this is the price. And the price might go up if Dylan Cease goes out and delivers the first half that we expect him to deliver. Steven, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I agree with that. That's actually the point I was going to make. I think the best thing the White Sox could do is wait and let Dylan Cease prove that he's still the Dylan Cease we saw 2 seasons ago. Because right now, if you're trading him, a lot of teams might be thinking they're gambling on which Dylan Cease they're getting. Mm-hmm. Why not let him prove that he's the guy that was a Cy Young contender rather than the guy that had an ERA over 4 last season?
Good point.
Yeah, and I think, the Brian Bannister / Ethan Katz lab, it's got Dylan Cease in a good spot right now. As Vinnie said, Dylan's not bothered by this. He's out there playing Frisbee golf and stuff, just chilling out. It's like, oh, man, I'm writing another poem. It's all good. Just tell me where I got to report to, brothers. All right, after the break, we'll talk about a rumor that maybe the White Sox will get a new right fielder. They're competing with other teams, but after the break, we will talk to you about that. At Game Time, they think that you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to the next big event. Game Time is a fast, easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, comedy, music, and theater events nearest you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And as you've been listening on this CHGO White Sox, I tell the story about me going to Atlanta a couple years ago, getting tickets on Game Time, of course, and then going to check on their Game Time guarantee, which says they have the lowest prices guaranteed, or they'll give you 110% of your money back. I went to a secondary market, and only one of those sites had a lower price. So I sent this screenshot to Game Time, and within 12 minutes, I got 110% of the difference in my account that quickly. See the view from your seats before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show you the total up front, so you're not guessing about all the prices you got to pay and the hidden fees. Buy tickets in 2 taps, and they're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money.
They're obsessed.
Obsessed. Game Time has deals right up to the day of the event and the second of the event, even an hour after, so you know you're going to get the best deal and find exclusive flash deals, sponsor deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, movie, comedy, and more. And at Game Time, The guarantee, as I told you before, means you'll get the best ticket price. You'll find the tickets in the same section or row for less. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app now and create an account. Use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And Vinnie, that is on you for ComEd and me too. We're doing our ComEd theater. Hold on.
Have to get everything out for ComEd theater.
It's getting easier for businesses to switch to electric vehicles. That's something we can all get behind for the health of the planet and the well-being of all of us who share it.
The electric grid is evolving to meet your cleaner energy needs as we all move with confidence toward an electric tomorrow. Whether you have one delivery van or a whole fleet of shipping trucks, ComEd can help guide you to make the changes that make sense.
So pray tell, what should business owners do?
They should go to ComEd. I got Irish there for a second. They should go to ComEd.com/clean to learn more about the resources, fleet rebates, and infrastructure incentives available to help businesses go electric. If you own a business, don't wait. Start making your plan today to switch to electric vehicles. They're good for business, good for the planet, good for all of us. Go to ComEd.com/clean.
Did you say ComEd.com/clean?
Your hearing doth not deceive you, sire. Go now and see how going electric connects us to a better way of doing business and a better future for generations to come.
I miss doing ad reads with you guys. This was great.
Acting!
I went through a couple of voices there. It was weird. Sir Laurence Olivier would not be happy. Sorry about that. But we had some news today. Robert Murray today tweeted out a very interesting and delicious tweet. I don't know if
ComEd theater's over, Herb.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if I necessarily like the deal, but he said 5 teams are showing interest in free agent first baseman Dom Smith, including the CHGO White Sox, sources say. Smith has posted an .846 OPS in the final month of the regular season last year and hit 6 home runs in 23 games in September. Now, it says first baseman, but Dom Smith in his career has played left, right, and first base. Any thoughts on Dominic Smith, who has had only 2 years of above-average hitting in his major league career, but he is a lefty?
Well, when I saw that tweet, my first reaction was to do what? They're interested in him to do what? They have a first baseman in Andrew Vaughn, who they are very much dedicated to having be the long-term solution there at first base. They also have a designated hitter in Eloy Jimenez as years of his playing defense in the outfield has not always gone well for him. You want to tell me how many games Dom Smith has played right field in his major league career? You don't have to tell me. I'll tell you.
Thank you.
The answer is 1.
Boom.
He's played in 1 game in his major league career in right field for a general manager who said that his intent is to improve defensively in right field. Listen, you might put him in right field. He might be better than Gavin Sheets, but guess who's played a lot more major league right field than Dom Smith? Gavin Sheets. How about that? It doesn't strike me as the slam dunk defensive improvement that Chris Getz says he's looking for. You can, as a White Sox fan, be as unexcited as you'd like with the additions, I should say, that Chris Getz has made this offseason. But he has done what he said he was going to do when it comes to improving this team defensively. I don't think he would not continue to do that with whoever he goes to get to play right field.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense because if Dom Smith was like a power lefty bat, you could say, okay, I got it. But he, as I said before, he's only had 2 above-average hitting seasons for his career early when he was with the Mets. And so, yes, he did start powering the ball when his last month with the Nationals, but as you said, his right field is questionable. It's, he might be a better outfielder than Gavin Sheets, but right field is a different beast, as anybody will tell you, than left field. The ball comes off the bat a little bit different. And so it doesn't seem like a huge upgrade that you would be battling 5 teams for Dom Smith's services. And like you said, there's no impetus to move Andrew Vaughn off of first, and Eloy Jimenez is on this team until he's not. And so he's a much better hitter than Dominic Smith. So, yeah, it's a good rumor. It's good things to talk about, but I think the White Sox should aim a little higher, especially when there's people out there like Tommy Pham who, you might not like the name and you think he's in a little trouble with the slapping of Jock Peterson. Man performed last year in the playoffs. Like, he showed out for the Diamondbacks. If they get that type of player, Adam Duvall, et cetera, even if they go and get Travis Jankowski, who is a glove-first guy who actually had a good offensive year last year, I'll be set. Dom Smith doesn't make sense for the White Sox, even if you're adding just as a fourth outfielder, fifth infielder type of player, because he really doesn't do anything exceptionally well. So that will probably do it for the CHGO White Sox show today. We are one man short. I think that Sean will be rejoining us on Monday. He's on assignment right now, but he will be back with us. That to my left is Vinnie Duber. You can read his latest article on ALLCITY.com. He is the CHGO White Sox beat reporter. Me, I'm Herb Lawrence. I'm Ecknerwall23 on the Twitter sphere. And our guy, I didn't mention him earlier, we're back. Stephen Nicholas.
Back, baby.
Yeah, we've had 2 Stephen Nicholas appearances this week. It's been good. We like our regular producers, but Steven's our in-season producer. We've got a nice rapport with him, so it's good to see our guy Steven, Hockey Steven, back with us. So you are Hockey Steven now. You didn't know anything about hockey before. Now you're damn.
It's Mr. Hockey in
greasy
parts,
goals, garbage goals. You got to get in front of the net Fred presence. That's Steven.
The crease. He's got to get in the crease.
Yeah, that's what Steven sounds like now. So for Vinny and Steven, my name is Herb, and thank you for joining us. Before we leave, give us a thumbs up, guys. Thumbs up, big up for us. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you later on CHGO White Sox.
We all silly like the mayor.